And welcome back to this week's edition of Two Coaches, One Grizz. I am joined here by my esteemed emeritus head coach, Gil Laura, and everybody's favorite fan, Mario the Grizz Mesa. Gentlemen, how are we doing this week?
Hey, well, we talk about fans. We had the fans at the door. We had to hold them back.
We're good.
But no, man, glad to be here. Blessed, thankful. Just ready to get another week, another episode going. I thought this weekend was good. Sports-wise, had a lot of stuff going on.
100%. I would agree with that statement. Grizz, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm missing football. I know we're going to talk about some other kind of football. But I'm going to be honest. I didn't watch any of that other kind of football.
A little get off my lawn
You missed
speech?
out, bro. You missed out.
It's not about get off anything no long. I think I'm actually the target demo here for that. They want me there to watch it. I just was interested in El Tigre. I wanted to see a little tigre.
Oh, a little tiger action?
Yeah, I wanted to see cars go round and round in a circle.
A little overtime action.
They
There.
told us-
Rotate, Apparently, that's how they do things. They start their Super Bowl at the beginning. So I just wanted to see what else was out there. Even if there was football, wanted to take a break. Just a week.
Just a weekend.
Just a weekend. But I was able to see some highlights, so I'll be able to, get into this talk with you guys, especially since you guys are my coaches and I want to be taught. So
we are going to get into some NBA All-Star Weekend antics. We also are going to talk about some MLB rule changes that I think are going to be pretty interesting. We'll dabble in some basketball and some MMA, but we do have to start with the weekend's debut of this season's XFL action. I know that we said that, last week would be the last week and we were going to talk about NFL, but a new league has brought it up for the third time. And I thought it was extremely entertaining. And, this may be a surprising product that will be here to stay for, the long haul, relatively speaking, this time around. Because there is some interesting rules and changes that the NFL is actually working in tandem with the XFL to test and see if it elevates the product overall. So let's talk about the teams and the layout of the league right now. There's 8 teams, right? There's a North and a South division. Okay, we got the DC Defenders, the St. Louis Battlehawks, the Seattle Sea Dragons, and the Vegas Vipers in the North division. And in the South division, we have the Arlington Renegades, the Houston Roughnecks, the Orlando Guardians, and the San Antonio Brahmas. Weird.
San Antonio Brahmas, baby, the Brahma Bull.
The direct owner of that is none other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the Brahma Bull. So, it should be interesting. There was a little conspiracy thrown out there already that there are the favorite just because one of the owners of the league is also a direct owner of that team. But so we'll see how that fares out.
That's the XFL.
But it was good because
It's supposed to be out of the ordinary.
That was a team that got caught up in one of this weekend's fireworks at the end of the game.
Correct.
Not a lot of points were scored in most of the games, but there were some interesting things going on at the end based on some of the rules and things that nuances of this new league.
So let's go ahead and start right there, right? We're talking about the St. Louis Battlehawks and the San Antonio Brahmas, right? The Brahmas seem to be in control the entire game, and like Coach said off the air, A.J. McCarron is the starting quarterback of the St. Louis Battlehawks, and he was not good for the first 57 minutes of the game.
Yeah, he sucked.
However, the last 3 minutes, or last really 2 minutes of the game, guy comes back and scores 18 points. And we're going to get into exactly how they come back from an 18, 19-point deficit or whatever it was to end up winning that game 18-15. But overall, like you said, the score, it was pretty low scoring. Just so you understand, like, the lay of the land of the league, they only practiced for about 5 weeks before the season started.
But let me tell you something. It was low scoring, but most of the teams threw the ball. Most of the teams relied heavily on the pass. It wasn't like a boring run. No, only 1 or 2 teams dedicated themselves to running the ball.
100%.
Everybody else was trying to sling it.
Yeah, you got a couple run and shoot offenses there, which is pretty hilarious, right? June Jones, if I'm not mistaken, is one of them. Run and shoot godfather, if you will.
And they started out hot and they fizzled in the second half. I mean, it's just like I said, it was good. It was interesting.
Yeah. So overall, you're looking at the scores, right? The Vipers and the Renegades. The Renegades win 22-20. Roughnecks and the Guardians. Roughnecks actually were the highest scoring team of the weekend. They beat the Guardians 33-12. Battlehawks and the Brahmas, like we said, the Battlehawks stormed back in the last 2 minutes of the game to win 18-15.
But let me tell you something. It wasn't Houston. It wasn't because they had that many, like, their offense was that potent or anything like that. It was turnovers,
right?
Turnovers and sacks. Their defense played really well.
Yeah, and then the nightcap, right? The primetime Sunday night game was the Seattle Sea Dragons against the DC Defenders. And by all accounts, you watched that game in that stadium. Yes, soccer stadium in DC, but it was rocking, right? The fans, at one point, they were not happy with the call, and the DC Defender fans, they started throwing lemons onto the field, where they had to clear the teams off of the field because they were getting pelted with lemons, of all things. And the reason why? Because they took away their beer snake. Their beer cup snake that they were building.
But it came back.
It came back. They gave it back to them.
It came back.
And the game was able to restart. So that was actually pretty funny. Listen, it is a fun product. Obviously, lower tier quality of athletes on there. These are guys that are trying to get back into the league. They're trying to show their worth to get on an NFL roster later on in the year. But as the Grizz said off air, it's a product that's going to stem the tide, right? To keep the palate wet for the real product, which is the NFL. It was fun for me watching. I hope that it continues on. Your overall reactions, Coach, to the product, and I know that you were back in the day a USFL fan and their spring league format. What's your initial thoughts of the league?
Well, it was good because they did have some ex-NFL guys on there, and we got to see Josh Gordon again. Josh had a good game in his debut.
Correct. For the Seattle Sea Dragons.
Danucci as well. So, I mean, there were quite a few guys. Kellen Ballage had a good game.
Yeah, had a good game. Yes, he did.
So, the NFL talent was there, or ex-NFL talent. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what other players they get and how the league develops. I'm interested in seeing in the next couple of weeks how the USFL develops. They had their draft today, so I want to see how that league works and how these contracts with TV
end up hashing out, right?
Works with them and how many people watch it. And we'll see. I mean, like I said, I thought it was interesting with the 1 point, 2 point, 3 point tries. I just thought it was a lot of different things that worked out well.
Do you see any of these rule changes that we're going to get into in a second? You see them being adopted at any point by the NFL? Like I said, the NFL is working with them to kind of test some of these rules out. Notably, like you said, the extra point plays, right, and the structure that they have there, as well as the kickoff, right? Keeping the kickoff in the game, making them a lot closer in vicinity, so that way there's not any of those high-speed collisions that you see in the NFL on the kickoffs. So I thought that was interesting. Let's start with the extra point structure, right? You can go for 1 at the 2-yard line, go for 2 at the 5, and then go for 3 at the 10.
And the 1 is a play, not a kick.
It is a play, correct. And you have to declare it before you get on the field. You can't change it after the fact. It is subject to penalties. So, for example, like if you go for a 3-point play at the 10 and there's a false start or an offsides on the other side, it will change the distance. So, theoretically speaking, you could hard count on the offense, get a little 5-yard freebie there, and still go for 3 from the 5.
You can try.
Now, on the flip side, right, you get a false start, you're also going to get moved back, and you still got to go for that 3 because you've already declared. Listen, I thought that was super fun. That's how the Battlehawks were able to come back. They were down, 17 points, was it? Something of that nature with 2 minutes left. They score. There's a turnover. They get the ball back. Okay, and this is how they were able to get the ball back. You can either kick an onside kick to get it back, or you can have
after they scored their touchdown, they chose, instead of there is no onside kick, going on for fourth and 15 from their own 25-yard line,
and they converted.
By converting that, you keep the ball, you keep the drive alive, and you have the opportunity to go drive down and try to win the game, or score and then go for the extra point and try to win the game, which is what they eventually did. And again, like I said, they were horrible for 57 minutes. They really couldn't do much. Their offense really did not do a whole lot the whole game. I mean, they had a total of 227 yards of offense.
And I think half of that was in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Again, I mean, they ran the ball well. when they did run it. Their pass game was less than 190 yards. So again, their offense was not that good to speak of. So,
and granted, that's a product of the way that their preseason was structured. They were only practicing for about 5 weeks, right? There were no preseason games, so this was very much a first game where they were trying to kind of meld and gel as offenses and defenses. As you can see, because of the scores, it was a relatively low scoring weekend, and I think that's because defenses, right, by nature of the game, are able to progress a lot faster than the offenses. So I do see that the scoring will go up as the weeks progress, and everybody gets more comfortable with the offenses that they're in right now, right? Particularly on the offensive line. The hardest thing to gel and to be really good at as a unit is offensive line. So, and you could see that early on because there was some defenses that were just pinning their ears back and going. There was a lot of sacks, during this weekend.
I want to say Houston had 7 sacks.
Yeah, it was a party at the ball there. So,
which by the way, I want to say this, that Paxton Lynch has now set a record for professional football. He's been benched in every league.
Awful.
Every league.
Now,
NFL, CFL.
I will say this.
USFL. I mean, everything.
I will say this, right? They did make it a point to say that all the quarterbacks were going to be played. They're still seeing who their guy is for each team going forward. And like we just talked about, it makes it more interesting and more fun because you can theoretically be down by 18 and still be in the game because an 18-point deficit is still only a 2-score game. Right, and as was proven by the theatrics with the St. Louis Battlehawks, you're in the game until the bitter end if you convert. A couple other interesting rule changes there is the double forward pass. Right, theoretically speaking, quarterback can throw the ball forward as long as the receiving player is still behind the line of scrimmage. He can still throw it. Right, another forward pass as long as he's behind the line of scrimmage. So that's going to be fun. We should see that, happening here in the next few weeks and the league teams taking advantage of that. We mentioned it briefly, the kickoffs. I thought it was interesting, right? Both teams begin the kickoff return unit and the kickoff unit. They start 5 yards apart from one another, right? That mitigates the gaining of speed in those high-speed collisions. The kicker stays where he usually stays, right, at the 30-yard line. Okay, the returner can be back there as well. Kicker's kicking it, and now you have 10 on 10, really, coming at one another, lined up in front of each other, and they're blocking. Okay, I think it's going to encourage more returns, right? You get past that first line of defenders, and you're gone.
Well, I mean, but it makes it more difficult to get past that line.
But it encourages them to kick off, right?
Well, they're going to kick off anyways. They have no other choice. It's either kick off or that's it.
Bang it through the end zone.
Or kick off.
Anyway, right.
So, but with that being said, it makes the return game much more difficult just because the blocks have to be so quick and they tend to slip off very quickly.
Right.
So the kickoff return game is going to be very limited. I do like the idea of the extra point, the play that you mentioned, the forward lateral or what have you. I don't know about the kickoff return. I'm still.
You're still not sold?
No, I like the NFL, and I think, and the Grizz and I were speaking earlier about it. The NFL has made some good changes as far as blocking is concerned, to limit a lot of injuries.
Yeah, no wedge, which I think is a good change.
And
you've
seen a drop. You've seen a drop in injuries during the kickoff return. I don't think we've seen as many injuries as we did in the past during that phase of the game.
The timing of the game has also changed also, right? One of the big changes is following an incomplete pass and out of bounds, the clock will restart. Right, so that kind of shortens the game, makes the action more.
Well, in the NFL, they've done the same thing. Even until the 2-minute warning, the clock doesn't really stop. When the player goes out of bounds, they'll reset the ball, reset the clock.
Right, and they're already aligned. Right,
but they do have a shorter shot clock per se. They have
the game clock.
They have a 35 second
play clock.
Play clock.
Yeah.
So
I think these are all interesting rule changes. I again, like we've talked about, the NFL is working with them. You have Dean Blandino, who is the head of the refs, who was a
Let
NFL
me tell you, that's
referee.
one thing, Grizz, and again, you didn't get to see it. That's one thing that for the first time in my life, a decision by referees was interesting.
In real time,
Because they would go
discussing it.
upstairs, the guy would be looking at it, and he would be, okay, all right, yeah, we got to catch. All right, no. It's an
When
incomplete
I
pass.
did actually go by the channels and I stopped by to see what was going on in the game, I did catch Blandino explaining the call, and it makes all the sense in the world to have that.
It was amazing.
While you're waiting,
While you're watching the guy.
see what's going on in the brain.
Yes.
See what's going on. And it felt quicker.
And the two guys were right there, and it seemed quicker.
Yeah, so that was interesting. It was also interesting to hear the play calls, right, in real time.
Tell me also another nice
Offensive
not
and
that I
defensive play
could
calls.
understand what the hell they're saying, even though I've coached football for half my life. It was what?
It was funny,
Like-
and they were giving Greg Williams some crap there because he's like, hey, well, he's still covering the face, but we can all hear it. It's just habit at this point, right? But it's really funny, and you hear the play calls, right? And offensively, right, in the NFL game, and what we're used to is really long play calls. What you can see, and again, this is a product of them not practicing as much as usual, and not being able to install such a
They still had
huge.
some pretty long. I mean, I was pretty like, wow.
Not as long as you would, as some West Coast offenses and stuff like that you know how when they talk about
Correct.
the pregame stuff, like these two-liners, right? It was more condensed, so that was really fun. It is a little faux pas that they probably weren't accounting for, and they should have. Is almost all the players are mic'd up, and you had some cursing because
Some
football's
bombs dropped, maybe?
correct. Football's gonna be football. Doesn't matter what league or how the team is branded. When the bullets are flying, man, it gets heated. You saw the announcers, or you heard the announcers, apologize in several occasions with the language on the field. But hey, listen, that's what you get when you mic up dudes that are,
But listen,
they're going full tilt.
at the end of the day, and I'm gonna mention that since the Grizz did mention Tiger earlier, the whole situation with guys speak that way sometimes amongst guys.
Correct.
Now, should we speak like that all the time? No, of course not. There's a time and a place. Just like the Tiger with the joke on after he outdrove
Little
Justin Thomas.
little Tampax action.
Exactly. It's all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. It's a joke between men.
And they're
It's
best friends,
guys
by the way.
being funny with each other. It wasn't supposed to be something that was out in the open. Or
That's the world we live in, buddy.
I mean, again, and it just...
And forever, I'll never understand why it's okay to see grown men hit each other at the speed of car crashes. See what happened to that kid in Buffalo, almost die on the field. That's what can happen. And yet we're going to be a little bit upset for dropping a word or two. That's why we don't do it here that often. But I fully believe you should speak your mind. And if you could see some things in life that they show out there, a couple 4-letter words ain't gonna hurt nobody.
Again,
in
like
fact,
I said,
inspires what I believe.
It's in the heat of battle. They're in a bit of a game. I understand. You're not going to
Even
be
more so that way.
You're not going to be watching your P's and Q's.
No.
And that's
darn
why.
Nabbit.
That's why I get upset with like
HE double hockey sticks.
it is. It's part of the game. I mean, they mic'd me up one time. I'll tell you that.
Hey.
And it wasn't good.
Yeah. No.
Went to church the next week.
Yeah,
or the
you
next
have
day.
to repent. How many Hail Marys was
It's
that?
not repenting. It was like, Coach, we saw you on TV. Yeah, I know. It was one of my,
Sorry.
not one of my best games.
Yeah, that's
we played Homestead. It was not good.
no. I could
It was
imagine.
not good.
Well, let's talk about what the greater impact, the long term impact of the league is, right? Because I think there's a lot of money that's being poured into it, right? There's a lot of ESPN, Disney is behind it. They are sponsors. All the games were either on ABC or ESPN this past weekend, so they are invested into the league. That it's looking like they're pouring the resources into it to ensure the greatest probability of it succeeding. Coach, you had mentioned the USFL. They just had their draft recently, and they're going to be starting up soon. Where do you think this goes? Do you think that there's long-term viability here? Do you think that there's a niche for it? Well, how do you see this going in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. There is a market for spring football. Now, is the market big enough for 2 leagues? That I can't say. That's the one thing that I worry about or concern myself about. We'll see which league. I mean, again, if the XFL is working with the NFL, they might have a little bit more money behind them.
Correct.
Than the USFL. With that being said, then the USFL has to be more aggressive in the players it tries to bring in, so to make their product a little better.
Right. Their product, not elite's the wrong word, but more viable than the USFL, right? I in my opinion, right, knowing, looking at it and studying it over the weekend and doing our homework on it, I do think what they're positioning themselves to eventually absorb the USFL teams, because I think the way that it's branded, and I could be totally wrong here, right? If I'm wrong, you guys can tweet us or message us and
don't worry,
and
we'll
correct
tell you
us.
right here.
The USFL is going to be televised on the Fox channels, right? Whereas the XFL is televised on the ABC and ESPN channels, right? The Disney platforms.
Which may not be Disney much longer.
Right. Well, yeah. Let's see what happens there.
But that's for another segment.
That's a whole nother complete, conversation for another day. But I do think that one or the other, I would say the XFL, if they are in cahoots with the NFL, would absorb those leagues. And now instead of, because the XFL has 8 teams, I don't know how many teams the USFL has. I think it's the same.
It's either 8 or 10. I'm not
right. So then, my opinion is, long term, if they're going to be viable, is they absorb one or the other league absorbs the other, and now you have a legitimate 16 or 20 team league, right, that plays in the spring league, right? And now this is a de facto minor league system that the NFL, right, the pro game, hasn't really had, right? The college game has been that, minor league system per se for the NFL, since the inception. So let's see if
it's NFL Europe right here.
Right. So let's see if that, that's where my opinion is. I mean, Grizz, what do you think long term? Where do you think this? You think it's destined to fail? I can see it in your face.
I mean, we've done the dance before. It's not the first time nor the second. Third time for the XFL, few times for the USFL. This is the second time for the USFL.
It's their second season, but it's
the same iteration.
Right. Last year was their comeback.
But they also had a kind of sports league here a few years ago. Maybe not the USFL if I'm wrong. Spurrier was coaching.
It was the AAF.
No, it was
something.
the AFL.
Yeah. What I'm saying is spring football. What I'm saying is an alternative to what is probably the biggest company in the world, the NFL, sports wide. I mean,
right.
The only thing that battles that is probably EPL stuff, soccer across
Correct.
the world. The NFL will determine how long these things are around. You're right. One of these leagues, first of all, one can't survive. I don't see 2, so one will probably take over the other one. Will they have 16 teams? Probably not. There's a few cities that have the same cities in the USFL. It'll just be what it is. If they can be like in the NBA, how the D League is, your minor league system, just give us quality football, something. Your place. For 3 months, you're giving us something else to watch until the big boy comes in.
To keep the beak wet.
And for the talent maybe that doesn't get drafted, for the guys that are just looking to keep playing the game, the only way these things will succeed long term is if you get paid. If people go, hey, I'm choosing to go play in the XFL over the NFL. I don't want to play in the fall months. I want my vacation time in November for some reason. I just think...
Here's my thing, right? Like, going back to when I graduated and I was done playing, if you told me at 21, 22 after I graduated and I was done with college football that, hey, we'll pay you $80,000 to go play at this de facto. I would have done it,
right. So, and I know, so...
Would you have done it? I would imagine.
Yeah, but we all say that because we will. And then you realize after getting beat up probably as much as they get beat up, you're like, man, the bills my hospital bills cost more than my season. Point is that if that's the case, why is the Arena Football League not like the 5th biggest league? It's just there's the NFL. There's 32 teams already. It's a lot,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, we love football. We get it 24/7, even when on the off season. But it's just like
the XFL is $5,000 a game.
Yeah. The bottom line
so
is
you make.
That's what it is, and that's across everybody.
And they get bonuses for winning.
Except the quarterbacks get a little bit more.
Got it.
Once again, it is what it is. If we understand that it is going to be just a minor league system for the NFL, another thing to watch during the off season, if it becomes that, it has a chance to survive. And once again, the NFL's helping them. So if that's the case, they want it to succeed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was definitely a fun product in the first iteration that everything came back in 2020 because it was rolling downhill and it was looking pretty nice right before the pandemic hit. And then when the lockdown is what kind of stopped that first iteration or that first wave.
Oh, that AFL with the AFL.
And then it came back.
But listen, like other sports leagues here in America, the MLS, bro, it's been around over 20 plus years. It's just now feeling like it's, hey, because it's got big contracts now. It's got teams that have been around for a long time. The NBA making the WNBA last 20-something years. Finally, you see women's basketball is on more prevalent. It takes time. And this is, once again, watered down football at the end of the day compared to what you're seeing every day. College footballs.
Yeah.
Still we already have a second league. It's college football.
Yeah, and
you know what I'm saying? Like,
I by no means, let me be very clear, by no means am I saying that this is going to be a better league where it sandwiches itself between college football and NFL, right? Because I do think in Alabama or one of the top tier Power 5 teams goes in there, and I think they lay waste to any of these teams that come in.
That's the bottom line. It doesn't have to. And look, USFL having teams like Birmingham, Memphis. It's cool that some cities that don't have professional football, you got a place to play. It's just a different option, like I said, for the time being. And I'll start watching it now if you guys are telling me it's worth the watch, because I just remember it wasn't worth the watch back in the day.
I will tell you this, another thing that's going to...
When you say back in the day, you're talking about the AFL.
No, I'm talking about the original XFL. Okay. The restart of the XFL a couple years ago in 2020 before the pandemic. I thought that was garbage. And it can't cancel anyway because of the pandemic, but I thought that was going to go bye-bye anyway.
I'm enamored because of the first iteration of the USFL.
Of course, but once again, we're talking about that was the actual...
apples and oranges.
But that was the only time that the NFL had a chance to be like, hey, be careful, bro. Our major college players are going and that was there. Actually to compete. Weren't they playing it basically at the same time in the fall?
No, they were in the spring. It was beautiful. Right. Because it was a spring league.
Right. But I'm saying they eventually would want to move into the fall.
Well, but the problem is that they did, which was stupid.
Right.
They needed to keep playing for 4 or 5 years to build a good following.
But that's what they wanted. They wanted a different option because you didn't make the kind of money back then. It's all about that, man. Right. Money's money. Well, the ABA trying to be, the NBA back in the 70s.
And I was looking now, and the salaries, the salaries for the USFL and the XFL are almost the same. Yeah. There's a $300 difference.
I think it's all about the power behind the NFL, and the XFL will win out if it has to be between these two leagues.
Right, and Coach brought it up before we started taping here. The USFL, they were getting the big dogs. They were getting the Reggie Whites. They were getting the Herschel Walkers.
Jim Kelly.
They were getting the Steve Young. There was because they were throwing
Anthony Carter.
They were able to pay them more than the NFL.
They were throwing the dollar signs at them. Right. And again,
or equal, whatever, a little more, whatever.
You think Lamar Jackson's going to be like, forget Ravens. I'm going to go play in the USFL. Not. What you gonna pay me? $50? Not $50 million like I deserve? Come on.
And to Coach's point, right? The death knell was, we want to play in the fall. We want to go head to head, and that was Trump's. That was actually Trump's.
His power move.
His power move, and it ended up backfiring on him with the New Jersey Generals, and that's to this day why he's probably not an NFL owner, because they hate it, because he's tried multiple times to try to get into the NFL to become an owner, and they voted him down several times.
It was ridiculous at that point.
listen, it's a fun product. I'm all in for the rule changes. I do see a path in the future to some of these rules infiltrating itself into the
extra
NFL.
Point rules will eventually come in, and I truly believe the 4th and 15 instead of an onside kick is awesome.
The option. That option is amazing.
Especially in today's game where it's wide open, sling it around
4th
town.
4th and 15 is not. If 4th and 15 is your granddaddy's 3rd and 5, baby.
Yes, it is.
It is not that hard.
And again, that's why I said it could be 4th and 20.
Yeah.
I mean, they could make it a little longer.
With these quarterbacks, they love to sling it, and you got all these receivers to 15 yards. Ain't nothing. I would love to see that.
And let me tell you, just to finish it up on this, and I know you're going to have some thoughts on this as well. I think that the league is also going to be bolstered by the fact that they're leaning into the betting culture now, and the sports gambling culture.
It was on every screen.
They're all over.
They had the line and the overrun. They had everything.
Coach texts.
It was hilarious.
He texts us during the game, right? And it's hilarious. One of the announcers is like, "Oh, there's some people that would really love this score here."
Just say it.
And the color commentator is like, "Just say it." They want the over to hit. Like, you can just say it. It's part of the culture right now. So I think that's another reason why, because it's more variable, right? Like, there's more of a let's throw a flyer on this, let's see what happens. So I think that's also what's going to bolster.
It's become part of the game. It really has become part of the game, and it's legal. And
once the NFL said okay to having a team in Vegas, that they knew. That was
once the NFL started having betting and gambling booths inside the stadiums.
Yeah,
it's over.
Right.
So,
once you go in there thinking it's the Kentucky Derby with the race.
Correct.
Right there, you're good.
Correct.
Go get your slip.
We're gonna leave it right there for this segment. I do, like I said, like I told them off air, I'm in. I'm not all in yet. It is a fun little product. Let's see how it goes. But we're definitely going to be talking about it as the season progresses here, and let's see what happens now with the USFL starting up soon, and see how this competition spurs, right? Because they're going to be going up against each other, right, on competing networks.
Right, it'll be in April. So
let's see how that goes. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting how it plays out. We're going to be right back with some of the NBA All-Star theatrics that we saw over this past weekend. So stay tuned. All right, and we're back for our second segment, an obligatory segment of sorts for NBA All-Star Weekend. NBA All-Star Weekend took place at Salt Lake City over the past weekend, and by all accounts, gentlemen, the All-Star game itself was probably the worst product of the weekend. It was it was a glorified, layup and shooting line. I think the best part of it was actually the draft beforehand and how they were just trying to be so politically correct with the draft and how not to, make everybody feel bad about who is the last person picked. So they picked the reserves first and then they went to the stars. And
still last, though. Doesn't matter.
It's frustrating to see a game where you're seeing the best players compete against the best players, and they've tried to tweak it and tweak it again and tweak it again. And it's not a game. They bring the ball down the field or down the court. Nobody's doing anything. And then it's just, okay, dunk or shoot from the 3-point line or the half court line.
Nothing's contested. The best All-Star game is baseball now.
Well, that's the thing, right?
It's the most competitive one.
And I'm glad you brought that up, right? They need to put some skin in the game. They need to put something at stake, right? After the 2002 MLB All-Star game where it ended in a tie, everybody was up in arms. How could you end the game in a tie? And this, that, the other. Nobody won. And I would say this, right? Before they made the rule that the winner has home team or the winning league has home field advantage in the World Series, if you would have said in a game that the National League won, you wouldn't really care. If you would have said that the American League won, you wouldn't really care, right? But now, when that happened 20 years ago at this point, that it was a tie, everybody was up in arms. And they immediately...
because they changed it.
They immediately, the next year, they changed it to whoever wins has home field advantage in the World Series.
They don't do that now, though.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they kept it. They've kept that rule.
In the MLB All-Star game, whoever wins...
I've never liked that rule, by the way. I've never liked it.
But those...
but it made it interesting. It made it worthwhile. It makes them play.
But baseball, even without that, still the easiest game to play even with nothing on the line, because it lends itself to a regular game. When you're playing these All-Star games, nobody wants to play.
But Grizz, the game immediately improved in quality after they made that change, because now the teams that are in it and those players that are in it, the pitchers are they're going full go, right? They're throwing gas, right? Everybody's in it. Now a hit into the gap, which if there was nothing on the line, I'm not diving for that ball. But now that something's on the line and that shortstop is on a contending team, he's going to play. He's going to dive for that.
Everybody plays.
Everybody plays now. I would contend that if you want the quality of the NBA All-Star game to improve, you do the same thing. You put the home field advantage on the line, right? So now the contenders, right? The Giannis's of the world, the Kyries, the Durants, I said Giannis, but everybody, all of your top players, now they're going to be like, okay, we got a shot to win. We need to win this so we can get home field advantage, right? The quality will immediately improve. What say you, Coach?
I mean, again, I wholeheartedly agree, because again, there's no passion in the game anymore. There's just nothing there to bring you to watch the game. Like, I flipped through it a couple times and I tried to stomach it. It was boring.
It was
just run up and down, run up and score, run up, dunk,
alley-oops, bounce off the backboard, half-court shot.
And again, it wasn't like somebody was running and defending, and then you bounce it off the backboard, and again, whatever. That's how I felt. I did not like it at all.
Grizz.
For your information, since 2016, the MLB does not award the home field to the All-Star game anymore. They stopped that 7 years ago.
Good job, because I still thought they did.
I still thought they did also.
Didn't, but I wanted to let you guys.
Okay, no, listen, this is a show of accountability,
because it's a stupid rule.
I heard that argument.
I don't care about the All-Star game, and it should not determine who is going to play for the biggest thing in the sport at the end of the year. So for 14 years they had it, they tried it, and
so then
it went away.
Then do away with it. Do something else.
I don't care for All-Star games in general. What I like is the activities around the All-Star game. That was the best part, like you said, of this weekend. The 3-point contest has always been fun to me. The dunk contest, once every 5 years, wakes up, has a moment, and then 2 years from now, someone will be saying, let's end it again. And then what's the other thing? The skills competition. Between that, to me, is a little bit of a joke.
So here's my thing, right? And we talked about this off air. Max McClung, I believe his name is, right? He wins the dunk contest. By all accounts, congratulations to that guy. Like, he's out of this world. This is the best series of dunks that we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's more of an Instagram star than anything else, right? He just signed the contract with the 76ers. I think he's played 2 total NBA games overall. Okay. The previous record was Kobe Bryant to win the dunk contest in his rookie season. He played 39 games, right? This guy's only played 2. Here's my thing. And I'm going to throw this out there. You guys tell me what you think about it. I think LeBron James never competing for the dunk contest and other superstars that followed not wanting to compete in it ruined the aura and, I don't want to say sanctity, right? That's not the right word.
Was Jay Morant in it? No.
John Morant was not in it.
But again,
because it's about the All-Stars, right? It's about the marquee talents.
I grew up watching Dr. J dunk.
Yeah.
Like
Michael Jordan.
It takes away from Larry Bird was 3-point guard. It just takes away from the game, from the festivities, from everything around when the superstars don't participate.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to get at, right?
The superstars for the dunk contest have been a joke for years. It's not just LeBron. It's pretty much everybody that once they have a big name, they don't want to compete. It wasn't like at the beginning with the Jordans, the Julius Erving. But then again, once again, that was also the beginning of that contest. There wasn't as much, you're going against your peers. But now LeBron James doesn't want to go and lose to a guy like McClung.
Well, but that's
part
what
of they're scared of.
But
that's part of the game. That's part of the interesting watch.
I'm with you.
But that's part of it. And this is the frustrating part.
That's one of the few things that I dislike about LeBron James. Has never done that.
Historically, the dunk contest was always the young and up and coming marquee talents, the ones that you knew that were going to be the superstars, the high flyers. They competed, okay, and.
But the past,
that's what it was.
Right, but I'm saying, but the past 15 to 20 years, again, I would say, and I would argue that this is the LeBron James effect. The guy is on the Mount Rushmore of NBA basketball, right? All-time leading scorer, been to the finals 10 times.
He's the second greatest player of all time.
Second greatest player of all time, arguably the first in some accounts. By him doing that, it signaled to all the other superstars to come, like, oh, we don't have to do this. This is not part of our legacy. And I would argue that it is part of some of the greatest NBA players' legacies that they all did it.
They don't
Kobe
care.
Bryant, Michael Jordan.
They don't care. They don't want to do it.
All of those superstars
you can't
that
force
had
them to do it either.
Understand, but all those superstars that had that mantle before him did do it.
Right.
And he kind of ruined that. That's the only stain I would say in his legacy.
Yeah, it's not really the stain. I mean, it's the dunk contest. But at the end of the day,
but that's what propped up the game.
Yeah, but once again, he's done so much more to the game that's propped it up enough. He had better dunks in the game, in the All-Star game, than some people had in the dunk contest. He could still dunk at 20 years in the league with force and aggression. And even if he goes against, he would still probably get 50s for some of his dunks.
For sure.
But they don't care anymore. It's just not that big of a deal for them anymore. And some of these people don't think there's any dunks left to do. Like the kid from New York that did the dunks twice with his elbow in the rim. I'm like, what are you doing, bro?
Barely anybody.
I get it.
That was bat an eye.
That was the Vince Carter dunk that he did.
Over.
Yeah, he get one like that. And yeah, just no. Get away from me. You're over it. You're not a fan. No, I could care less about that guy. The kid from was it the Atlanta? The one that went in the finals with him. He did a couple nice dunks. But at the end of the day, what do we like? We like short guys. If he's white, even better.
The white he took it.
Come on.
No, that guy's a high flyer. Say what you want.
He is a high flyer. But I'm looking at this kid. You might think he's a publicity stunt. He was last year's G League Rookie of the Year. He has been a good player where he's been. He's not going to get the love. He was undrafted in the 2021 draft. They gave him a shot. It's not like you could just, hey, we're going to put him in and he's going to automatically win the dunk contest. He's still got to do the dunks because half the time you get up there, and the thing why I hate the dunk contest, they'll miss the first 5 times, then they get the dope dunk.
How many tries do they have?
Like, and it's just human because that dunk on the 6th try is still better than 1,000 other tries.
Right.
But it's like you need to be first time dunking, and he got all 4 of his dunks on the first time, and they were all awesome dunks. That doesn't happen. Once again, I think we should bring back, now that he won it, bring him back next year, bring Aaron Gordon who won one, bring Levine who's won one. Now bring back the old couple years ago.
Champions.
Every couple years we have the Champions remix. Do something like that. But I want guys that I know I can trust, not some of these guys that come in there and don't know what the hell they're doing. It's a dunk contest, man. Dunk the ball. You know, some of these people have, oh man, it's horrible to watch. That's why the 3-point contest at least is the fun one, because you know what you're getting, guys that shoot threes.
Right.
And it's cool to see a guy that can make 10 in a row.
Listen, I think it's kind of like endemic and a product of the new age athlete where they're prima donnas, right? Like it's all load management and like, I don't want to get hurt in my contract, right? Kind of like what happened with the home run derby. Back in the day, the home run derby was the marquee event. And now it's like, I don't want to mess up my swing.
Basketball's my second favorite sport, but I'm like, Gil, I can't do NBA anymore. I can only come now into the NBA for right now.
Playoffs.
Second half, at least. We got the last couple months where they start kind of giving it crap again. But yeah, once the playoffs come, there's no more load management. These guys, and even then, they're still probably, we got one game, we could drop them off for up 3-0. Like, come on, man. Like, play the basketball game. Not asking much.
Put effort.
You're running back and forth, man. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
I remember when Dwayne Wade broke Kobe Bryant's nose in the All-Star game. Like, that's effort. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what we
don't make them like that anymore, man. We do not make them like that anymore.
And then, the stain on the game is the one time that somebody tried to play defense in the game this weekend. LeBron trying to block a shot. He gets his finger caught in the rim, and then that was that for the game.
Because it's lazy.
It's like back in the day, Sean Taylor in the Pro Bowl nailed, I think it was Chris Moore, one of those punters, and just laid him out. He only knows how to play one speed. And if you let these players play the right way, it would, of course, be a more fun game. It's just, man... Once I know that it's just gonna be okay, it's a shooting game, layup. One guy's throwing it off the backboard, nobody cares. I mean, it's fun to watch, but
can we agree that there should be some like changes there, like make it more interesting?
I don't think the game should even be played.
Yeah, it's got.
I don't think these games need to be played anymore. You are an all-star. That's it. Because then half the people you pick to be on the team are hurt. Like, look at the Pro Bowl.
Oh, that's why it's a flag football game now.
Yeah, they had to switch it because who was one of the quarterbacks that ended up being a Pro Bowler? Lamar's backup.
Correct. Come
on. Are you kidding me?
Sir, Derek Carr.
Derek Carr is another one.
Derek Carr at least played the season, and he's a starter. And this guy, the backup, had like 3 touchdowns, and he's a Pro Bowler. I mean, it's just once you get let me get in the line. The seventh
Tyler Henley, right? That's
his name.
Correct.
Tyler
Huntley. We're talking about him. He was one of the reserves. The dude had 1 touchdown or 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions or something like that, and he made the Pro Bowl roster. But again,
it's to me, you just name the best guys. They're all-stars, Pro Bowlers, and that's it. You don't have to have a game. What do we need to see the game? Nobody wants to watch the game anyway, so why are we having the game? Have the activities around the game.
Grizz,
donate some money.
You're a smart human. You know exactly why they're going to have that All-Star game. Because it brings in hundreds of $millions of revenue.
Exactly. So while that game is being played and bringing in the money, I don't care to watch it.
And what I'm saying is that if it's going to continue to happen, put some skin in it. Right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that if the product is going to be there, let's make sure it's a good product.
What would you like
You're gonna
to
make
do
your money
for that product, sir?
I don't know. I don't
want that product to affect the actual regular season going ahead. It is an exhibition. So what can you do for me? Give them more money. Maybe they like more money.
I would venture to say that the celebrity game was probably more fun than the actual All-Star game.
It was more fun. Metcalf got hopped.
Oh yeah, you saw some dudes. Some of those NFL players.
And that boy jumping, think the GM for Seattle's like biting his nails. Please don't tear an ankle, or just, it's constant. Like, people are worried every second. So if you make these guys play hard and you give them a little carrot for that All-Star game, and then the guy blows out his knee, oh my God, why'd we do that, bro? Go back to the layup line. Nobody's going to be happy, man. So you know what? You take what you get. Some people like the layup line. Go watch it. If not, like I said, bro, I got. What the beauty is, man? I got to watch The Last of Us. Great show. If you're not watching that on HBO, it's a great watch. There's so many options. We don't have to just watch this glorified, program that's being offered to you. Go watch something else, man. Change the channel. Listen to Two Coaches and One Grizz again. I don't know what to tell you.
And we're going to leave it at that on Grizz's Soapbox Rant. We'll be right back to close up the show. We're back to close out the show here with a very rare show where we cover the big 3 in American sports. All right, we're going to talk about the MLB rule change. We've kind of been on a rule change kick here in this episode. The 3 big rule changes for the MLB season is, number 1, I think, which is going to be the most impactful, right, is the pitch timer. Now, pitchers have a 15-second clock while the bases are empty and a 20-second clock when runners are on base. And this also comes with, timeout restrictions. Hitters only have 1 timeout per plate appearance, and they must be in the batter's box with at least 8 seconds left on the pitch count, right? Pitchers are only allowed 2 disengagements, meaning that they can't just waste time, fake throwing to first to keep runners on base, right? Any more than 2 engagements is going to count as a balk, right? And then it limits pickoff attempts, which is going to, right, the effect of that is going to increase scoring. this rule,
or so they hope.
Right, or so they hope. These rules and the rules that we're going to discuss here in a second have all been kind of tested and messed with in the minors for several seasons. Right, in the past, in the 2022 minor league season, this specific rule increased stolen bases by 26%, and it also led to a game length reduction of over 25 minutes in the minors. So that's what they're hoping, right? They're trying to spur more young fans.
A quicker game.
Quicker game, right? Because the young fan nowadays is, why am I going to waste my life 4 hours plus watching a game? I think it's interesting, this particular rule, right? Because someone who played the game growing up, the pitcher has the sole control, right? He's the end all be all when it comes to game pace. Okay, and he can kind of, dictate how long the game takes or how long, the momentum or lack thereof of the game goes. So, Coach, what are your thoughts right off the hit with this first rule change?
I mean, again, I have no problem with that. The idea of going ahead and trying to speed up the game itself is not something that bothers me. Just because sometimes the games do take forever. Like, I do know the Yankees and Red Sox games are
marathons. Marathons.
Ridiculous. So I do think that is a step in the right direction. Whatever helps to keep the game viable. I know that Grizz also has some thoughts on keeping the game viable since he loves baseball so much.
He gave up on this one a long time ago. Listen, I grew up, this was my first love, right? So I love baseball, but it got to a point as I grew older, right, and started to, my heart got stolen by football. It was like, hey, listen, I used to grow up sitting down watching the game with my grandfather. We're huge Yankee fans, but it got to the point where I was like, listen, dude, call me after the 7th inning stretch, especially in those Red Sox games where the game may start at 7 o'clock. It's 12:30 and they're still like in the 7th inning. And you're like, what the hell's going on, right? I do like it. I do, like the fact that they're going to speed up the game. The other restriction or the other rule change is the restriction on shifts in the infield, right? Now, prior to the ball being thrown, prior to the pitch, all four of the infielders need to be in their respective positions on the field, right? And their spikes need to be in the dirt, meaning you can't have the shortstop or the second baseman in shallow outfield, right? Or you can't shift, right, for a left-handed hitter. You can't shift them all the way over. This is kind of a retaliation on the analytics, right? If you have a left-hand hitter who just pulls the ball to right field, they used to shift everybody over there. Right. And that's an analytics thing.
I'm okay with the short field guy because it kind of reminds me of softball. But again, I think that the shift is something that you got to get used to. Start bunting down third base line.
Right.
Start
like the National League started doing, right? They're learning how to play small ball, right? Get runners on base, bunt or hit to where they are.
Figure it out.
And I will agree with you. This is in some respects, the loss of, a lost art of hitting, directional hitting, right? Hitting where the defenders are not.
Here where they ain't. It's not that hard.
Again, that hasn't been the case in a long time in this era of analytics where everything is a golf ball swing to try to get the ball out of the park.
There's home runs.
Either strikeout or home run. And, the days of Tony Gwynn are long gone, right? Where that guy, he could hit for power. But if you gave him a little lane, that's where that ball was going.
He's going to make things happen.
So it's been I think this is going to spur scoring. I think it's going to make the game, again, more interesting. There's going to be more hits. That there's going to be a de-emphasis on the home run. And let's see how teams adjust. Let's see how the hitters adjust as well. Because, again, I think this is a retaliation to the analytics side of the game and how heavy it's dictated the evolution of the game. Now, those restrictions it's in the minor leagues over the past several seasons, it's decreased strikeouts and it's increased scoring, right? And it's also been able to highlight the athleticism of the players on the field now, right? Now we're really going to see if a shortstop has that range, right? Now it's going back to, oh, well, let's just draft shortstops that can hit the long ball. Whereas before, shortstop was a defensive position where they were all over the field, right? That's kind of been lost with this era of shifts and analytics. The last one is bigger bases, right? These bases look like extra large pizza boxes on the field
Gigantic.
right now.
They look huge.
Right, so bigger bases, right? So it's decreasing the distance from first or from home plate to first and from third to home plate by a total of 3 inches. You're going to have a lot more safe calls, right? And it's also it has shown to reduce injuries in the minors over the past couple seasons by about 15% here. We're going to get a lot more safe calls. It's going to be a lot more interesting. You're going to have a lot more runners on base. The unintended
I didn't know 3 inches made that much of a difference.
World of difference in some respects, sir.
Scary.
I will tell you this, though. This may have an unintended consequence of a lot less no-hitters and perfect games being played because of how much close that distance is going to make a difference there on those close throws to first base. So I think overall these rule changes are going to be positive for the game, especially in this new era. Let's see how it may take a couple seasons to adjust, right? But you will see a lot more small ball, I think, and a lot more scoring, right? Kind of like what happened with hockey with the rule changes and the scoring went up. So I think it's an overall change, right? Especially in a sport where it's archaic. Baseball is an old boys club, and they do not like change at all.
Well, but again, it's because you don't want to mess with the game. The game is the game. It's baseball.
It hasn't changed since the 1880s.
When you start putting up these big bases, it looks like softball. When you start doing all these different things, it changes the game.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to avoid, which I understand. Again, it comes down to pitching, hitting, and fielding. That's what they wanted to come down to.
And see what happens, right? So again, a very rare show where we hit on the big three in American sports. We're gonna pull the Grizz back in here and bring him back into the fold of the show because he's just been rolling his eyes for the past 5 minutes or so. We're gonna talk about a little, an abrupt segue into college basketball. Right now that the main league of football is gone, right? We're turning our eyes to college basketball. March Madness is upon us. Okay, even here at home where we have the mighty Miami Hurricanes ranked number 11 in the AP poll right now.
Number 13.
13.
Oh, 13.
13 in the AP poll.
11 in the coaches.
11 in the coaches poll.
They just won right now.
Hey, baby, what was the score of that one?
76-70.
There it is. So, Coach, take it away. I know that you've been following it pretty closely here. You got some interesting calls and games.
The Canes are playing well. The Grizz just mentioned that they could end up being the number 1 seed in the ACC. North Carolina has completely fallen off the rocker.
They're 16-11.
They're just playing so they have there's no semblance of what they were last year or how they finished last year and their run in the NCAA tournament. So they're really on the bubble. To be honest with you, they're out right now. Duke is starting to make a run. Duke is starting to play better. Clemson had a good season, and the Hurricanes are there. Virginia also looks
solid.
Excuse me, like it's a good team. So we'll see how the tournament works out. The Big 12 has been the conference this year of the best teams.
Right. Yeah, they've been kind of.
Big 12 is really playing well. Kansas is rolling right now, playing unbelievable basketball. Coach Self has the boys balling. Baylor just lost a couple minutes ago at Kansas State. But again, that league in and of itself might be 7 or 8 deep.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at, let's look at
they got 6 teams for sure making it to the tournament.
Yeah,
and that's why I said they got 2 other teams that could get in.
And you know what? It's funny too, right? When you look at the top 5 here, right? You have Houston, Alabama, Kansas, UCLA, and Purdue, right? And one, as a non-traditional college basketball fan, you look at Alabama being up there ranked 2 overall, and you're kind of, I mean, they've been good and they've kind of been in that conversation here for the past few years, but this is really like, oh crap, Alabama? Ranked in the top 5, not the football team, but the basketball team.
Uncharted waters for them to be in this position in basketball. With that being said, they're playing very, very well. But they've had an incident that just happened over the last couple of weeks that I think could derail them. We'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, one of their top players who's slated to be a lottery pick, is implicated in a murder charge.
Well, I mean, he's involved but not involved.
Correct.
So again, we have to see how that's going to go. He has not been a person of interest. The young man that did commit the crime has already been arrested. He's going through different things, but it is a cloud that hangs over their head.
Now,
it's at the wrong time for any of that to happen.
So they're not professionals, right? These are kids. At the end of the day, they can be very much so affected by the off the field issues. But all that aside, if they perform well in the SEC tournament, I mean, they're a lock for a 1 seed, right? You would say?
Well, I mean, right now they're sitting as a 1 seed,
right?
So again, we have to see how that goes. Talking about SEC basketball, Kentucky's not playing well at all.
One of the reasons why Alabama's probably having a big
correct, and they have started to play better as of late. If that will translate into anything in the SEC tournament and get them to the dance, that's yet to be seen.
Right.
Because they just have not played well all year long.
Well, that's the beauty of having Calipari as your coach. You have a chance in the tournament. But they haven't won a tournament game in 4 years.
Say it again.
Kentucky.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can. I mean, it's just it's kind of surprising. And again, it's you look at it and it is expected, right? With the coaching turnovers, right? That some of these blue bloods may be kind of taking a slump here.
But it's more so with the one and dones.
Right.
The one and dones have really been a situation that's hasn't boded well. Again, talking about SEC, we're talking about Tennessee is also playing pretty good basketball, even though today it looks like they might lose to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is another squad that's played very, very well. They're at 20-7. As far as the Pac-12 is concerned, really it's UCLA.
And everybody else.
Maybe USC, maybe.
So
because I mean everybody else is just they're not, no one else.
I would ask you this: does the tournament look as wide open as it has been in the in the past 10 years or so?
When you have a team from the West, from the West Conference that isn't Gonzaga, it's wide open,
right?
Because St. Mary's.
Well, St. Mary's has been, I'd say, besides Gonzaga, out of that conference, always second. They're always in the mix to make the tournament, but they
don't make it.
Right, and now
this year they're
going to be at least the top 5.
They're top 10 in the country. They're playing really good basketball.
Well, overall, if you look at the top 25, you're littered with a lot of teams that are not normally there in the big conferences.
I need to regress for a moment. I said USC. It's Arizona.
Yeah.
Who's the other Pac-12 team?
Well, Arizona's,
it's Arizona
and UCLA. Everybody else from the Pac-12 will be at there. You have, Northwestern is in the top 25. A team that I think they made it to the tournament for the first time in their history a couple of years ago. They're never that good. The Big 12 and the Big 10 are pretty much your best of the big conferences. But yeah, it's littered with a lot of teams. The Houstons of the world are in the top. You have, once again, the Gonzaga, St. Mary's, a lot of Big East teams, Xavier's. You have Marquette's in the top 10.
Creighton's going to be there.
Creighton's another team that they've been really good the last few years. You know what I'm saying? Like San Diego State. You got a lot of new names, maybe, that people aren't used to.
And one notable team that's been in this conversation for a better part of a decade now that's not here and it's glaring, again, from a non-traditional basketball fan, is Ohio State.
They've had a horrible year.
Terrible.
Yeah, Ohio State's been pretty bad.
Season.
They usually are pretty good.
And they've been cream of the crop in the Big Ten for the past several seasons.
I think they made a mistake by getting rid of their head coach.
Right.
I think that he had done a great job for many years.
Yeah, I mean, Big Ten, you don't even have Michigan State up there, and usually they're always in the mix. I mean, at the end of the day, if you get these teams that sneak in, like Duke hasn't been anything under a 2 seed in probably like at least 15 years. So, I mean, you're going to get a Duke in there probably at a 7 seed. You're not going to want to see them if they're playing hot. It's going to be a fun tournament. That's what I see. I see a lot of crazy brackets getting busted.
I'll tell you what, one of the better teams, and they've been playing well all season, is Houston.
Yeah.
And with their defense,
they made it Elite 8 last year, Final Four 2 years ago. Kelvin Sampson's doing a great job there. Phenomenal job. Yeah, you might end up with all the turnovers of all these teams I'm talking about. You might end up with a Houston, Kansas, UCLA, kind of the same kind of teams.
Purdue might be the outside team.
I've seen Purdue. They've struggled the last couple games.
Have you seen the center they got?
Oh, that guy's in the little bit that I've watched, that guy is the truth.
He could be a dominant.
We're not even there yet, but I just have a feeling.
And you had mentioned it before. I don't know if it was off air or last. Like that dude, you have to double him, and then when you double him, he's got the ability to.
The problem is you can't double him. You try, and then he kicks it out.
Right.
They shoot. He's just a huge force in the middle,
like a Jokic, a center.
I don't see them going all the way though. I still think this is the year.
Go ahead.
Since every year they've been up there, now they've had a couple. We were talking about the West, the Zags. This is the year that the Zags are kind of under the radar a little bit. They're still 12.
No pressure, playing with house money.
No, they're very much under the radar.
They're very under the radar, but they've been so good for so long. I mean, it's a warrant to them being 23-5 and still, like you said, St. Mary. That's the team. St. Mary's is so good because of the Zags. For the last 20 years, they've had to hey, we have to up our game, make better. I mean, BYU's is in that conference, and they didn't play good this year. But I'm saying the Zags not being in the top 5 like they've been the last few years. I think being like a 3 seed this year, I would pick them to at least get to the Final Four. It's going to be a fun tournament. I love March Madness.
Grizz, to steal something that you say very often, mostly in football, this year more than any year, it's all about the team that gets hot. Oh. You get a team that comes in and gets on a streak and gets hot, and we may have a surprise.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something. That's one of the reasons that I'm glad that Gonzaga is not undefeated or only lost one game. Because you always go into the tournament going, bro, you got to win 8. Yeah. You got to win 6 games. You got to win these games. You got to go 6-0. You got to go 8-0. And
especially in their conference, if they don't win the conference tournament, they'll get seeded badly because you didn't beat weaker teams because their schedule's weak because of that.
Usually, yes.
But yes. I'm in that, man. That's what I'm saying. Having those 5 losses already, having a team like St. Mary's give you that run for your money all year. Bro, I think they're going to be really tournament tested.
St. Mary's has a nice little point guard.
Yeah.
They have a couple of nice looking. They got some solid.
Don't be surprised if you see Gonzaga and St. Mary's, depending where they're in the draw. Could be in the Elite 8, both of them, something like that.
I can tell you one thing that these brackets, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Everything we're talking about here is going to be thrown out the window.
And I
like Tennessee, but then the way they lost to Kentucky.
I will tell you this: if there's a year to just go auto pick. And just auto-generate.
You might see all chalk this year because of all that we're talking about. Because everything's so out of whack that it just turns into perfect.
Listen, you got a Conference USA team in Florida Atlantic that's gonna scare some people.
Which is hilarious that we're even that they're even in this conversation.
Hanging out there, they've been they were in the top 25 a couple weeks ago. They win their tournament, they'll probably be like an 8 seed, 9 seed. You got a
Kent State in the MAC.
You took it straight out of my mouth. You're looking at the notable teams here, like Charleston.
And you're gonna have those, man. You're
gonna have some teams.
Those teams are gonna be ranked. These are gonna be 12 seeds, 11 seeds, and you're gonna be like, oh god, I gotta play this team in the first round. I'm out. It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be interesting. Very interesting.
This is the best time right now. We got the last couple weeks of the college season, and then you're gonna have their tournaments that are always fun to watch. And that's it. 3 weeks from now, it's pick your brackets.
Yes, sir. it's gonna be fun. Like I said, this is one of the most wide open years we've seen in recent memory. And speaking of competitiveness and bloodbaths, Coach, I know you want to close out the show here with a impressive UFC showing this weekend.
I mean, this weekend the main event was a women's fight, and it was Blankenfield against Andrade. And I really haven't seen much of that young lady, Blankenfield, but she gave Jessica Andrade a wrestling lesson.
And Andrade's been the marquee name for a minute now in that division.
She's had some good fights, won some big fights. So she was the incumbent veteran coming in. She took the fight on short notice, which usually you don't see that. But I guess she figured that she had this young lady. And
she had it all locked up.
She was going to beat the crap out of her. And she was impressive. She can fight. She's got a nice ground game. I mean, she tapped her.
Yeah, it was a wrap.
I was taken by surprise because I was like, oh my God, like where'd this girl cut
out of nowhere?
I mean, the Molly McGraths are the one that's getting the publicity, and this girl has just out of nowhere just boom
exploded.
And she's there, and this weekend there is a fight night, and I'm gonna take a guy that's a heavy chalk, but he's so good that I have no other choice. His name is Andre Muniz. He'll be fighting Brendan Allen. Good grappler. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's one of the guys that I've kept up with. He's a good fighter, real good fighter. It's a decent card. Next week card is the one though with Bones Jones coming back. I received a phone call this week when I left work. And I go, man, this guy never calls me. Why is this guy calling me? And, they wanted to ask me about Bones Jones at plus 100.
Is it a usual suspect?
No, it's one of our guys. It's one of our guys, which is not a usual suspect, but it's one of our guys. And
fights on the March 4th.
March 4th, yes.
What do you think?
March 4th. Man, I told him honestly, it's a tough fight to gauge. I think everyone's going to take Bones Jones. I think everybody's going to be on him. But people forget he hasn't been in the ring in 3 years. He's fighting a top quality guy. He's not fighting a slouch. Cyril Gane is a tough opponent.
Correct.
The guy comes from Francis Ngannou's camp. He's wrestled. He's fought. He's also not a small guy. He also has a decent reach. So it's not the typical fight that Bones Jones is used to having at his lightweight division.
Yeah, for sure. And you brought it up how Bones Jones hasn't been in the ring for 3 years, and this may be an equivocation, but like this is the only way that I can kind of preface it from our experience with football. Like you can practice and you can condition and you can be ready for the rigors of in football a game, but there's nothing like when you're seeing that game
when
speed.
When the bullets are live.
Correct.
It's a whole different ballgame. When the bullets are live, it's a whole different ballgame.
That with the moniker "fight gone bad," right? So, like you can prep all you want, but when you're in there and the adrenaline's going,
you get hit at the wrong time, you step wrong. I mean, how many fights have we not seen guys already twist ankles, a knee, and all of a sudden that's it, fight's over.
Right.
And that's just it. To me, it's a grind. It really is a grind. And maybe it's been good for him. I don't know. To me, when you're a fighter, you got to stay active.
Yeah,
you got to have
a long time.
At least 2 fights a year, maybe even a third if the first one was easy. You got to stay active. That's why when we see Volkanovski, and when I see he's stayed active, he fights the good fights. He fights the best guys. So, of course, his fight game is at the top of the top. I can't say that about Bones Jones right now. As good as he is, as much as he's the pound-for-pound best fighter that's ever gone in the octagon, right now, I think it's a tough fight.
No, I would agree. And the only reason I even hesitate to say that it's not fair is one of his best attributes that we see which makes him such a tough opponent, right, is his length, his ability to not allow you to get inside because he's just so long. And his leg kick game that he had in the past and his reach, right? Like that is something that has always, whatever opponent it was, some of the best fighters, he's kept them at bay and, worn them down in that respect and has allowed those fighters to make mistakes that he capitalizes on with a kick to the side of the head, right? They stay open, and he's got a freaking 80-inch reach or some craziness like that.
He's also 35 years old.
That's also another thing, right? Like,
he's also 35.
He's long in the tooth.
So the last 2 or 3 years, what could have been peak years, he hasn't been fighting.
And that's the tale, like age-old tale of what could have been if his prime was not wasted with his off the field issues,
or half of it, because I think he did have his prime in the ring, but I think he wasted a quarter of it or half with those issues
for sure.
Especially after he beat DC, he was on top of the world.
Correct.
Like, there was nobody out there.
Correct, gentlemen. Great show. We're gonna leave it at that. I want to thank our sponsors, General Carnitas Gourmet Meats. Reach out to generalcarnitas.com for all of your premium meat needs. Prodigy Coaches, K through 12 tutoring and test prep. Reach them at prodigycoaches.com. And then finally, Prodigy Athletic Gear. Reach out to them for all of your sportswear and athletic gear needs. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Hope to see you guys again, ready to rock with the fun stuff that we're seeing here in the sports world. Let's get it. 2 coaches.
Listen, before we sign out, Eric Bieniemy's an OC with the Washington Commanders.
Oh, yes.
He's a Redskin, a Foreskin, a Commando, whatever you want to call them. He's one of those guys.
This guy.
Let's see what happens. Let's see. I don't know.
So before we close out, and I'm, great job. I'm remiss that we didn't spend some time on this. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's a good move for him career-wise?
I think
if
it's
he
the
wants
only
to be
move.
A head coach?
I think it's the only move. Number 1, it's the only move. Number 2, I don't know if anybody heard Shady McCoy's comments on Eric Bieniemy.
What were the comments?
That number 1,
please enlighten us.
He doesn't like when we go into meetings.
He doesn't say a word.
The person that talks to us is Coach Reed. When there's corrections to get done, the guy who talks to us is Coach Reed. He's tried to come out on the field and be the tough guy, cuss players out, this, that, and the other. He doesn't even know his players.
So the epitome of a lieutenant.
So again, I go back to what has this role been, or what has his job been in that team. We're gonna find out.
We are going to find out.
We're really gonna find out. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I really think, in the bottom of my heart, that this might be one of those coach in waiting situations. Because as you know, Coach Rivera has had some health issues and stuff over the last few years. And I think that over the next couple of years will be his last 2 years, and then he'll step down.
And you see him stepping in.
And Bieniemy would be able to step in. But again, let's see. Be careful what you ask for.
100%.
You might get it.
On that note, 2 coaches, 1 Grizz. Out.